بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة إلى الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. ربي زدنا علما ربي زدنا علما ربي زدنا علما. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. So we're continuing with level 4 of NTA 1. We're taking a little bit of a detour. Brother Dahir asked a very good question last time, which was about memorization. So if you recall, last time we spoke a lot about the importance of memorization, and I said that I would prepare something for us to talk about memorization, how to memorize, why it's important, etc., etc. And in preparing the class, I ended up getting carried away, and now the whole class today will basically be around memorization. It was just such a rich topic to explore. So we're taking, let's say, a slight detour before we begin Surah Mulk. If we do have time towards the end, we will try and begin at least a bit of Surah Mulk, but if not, we will at least try to recite some of it. So yeah, I thought it would be helpful for us to take some time to think about memorization properly, to understand it, where it comes from within our religion, and how to go about it, because as we encountered last time, it's something that's critical to us remembering Allah throughout our lives, but also learning how to learning the correct cognitive frames to be able to go about our lives in a way that is pleasing to Allah. And that is fundamentally connected to being with the message of the Quran as much as possible. So I think it's good that we'll spend today on memorization. And of course, if you have any questions, do just I won't be able to see your faces because I'll be sharing the screen, but do just feel free to unmute yourselves and to let me know what your questions are. So I will begin to share my screen. Okay, can you all see?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, so to begin with, I've called our session Guarding the Quran. We'll see in a little bit more detail why later on, but the word hifz itself is more, it has more of a connotation of preserving and guarding than it is necessarily with memorization. That tells us something of the function of the hafiz. And so that's what we'll be doing today. You can see the picture on the right. That's called the Birmingham Quran. It's an interesting name. It was a manuscript found in the University of Birmingham in, I think, around 2015. They didn't realize how important it was, but it actually turned out to be a near full manuscript of the Quran that dated to just around the time of the Prophet ﷺ or slightly after him. And so it's an incredible historic artifact, and it accords perfectly with what we have today. And so it tells us about the preservation of the Quran and how the Quran has reached us both in oral and written documentation. So I thought that was a nice framing to our session today, because as we'll see later on, hifz and memorization, it has a strong connection to preserving the Quran for future generations. So what we will be covering today is, firstly, we'll just be recapping what we did last session, which is around adorning our lives with the Quran. That was sort of thinking about how we go about our days and how we have these pockets of remembrance scattered throughout our days, and how we would ideally want to make sure that the Quran features in these pockets such that we may continually be acquainted with the meanings of the Quran. Then we'll talk about memorization. There's quite a lot here, but I think first we'll just say what is hifz exactly, linguistically and technically. So within the Islamic sciences, there's a distinction between a linguistic meaning of a word and the technical usage within the sciences of the religion. Then we'll look at the theology of hifz. What I mean by that is some of the important beliefs and spiritual etiquettes that underlay hifz and memorization of the Quran. Those will be very, very important. In fact, all important for engaging properly in memorization. Then I very briefly want to talk about neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change. The reason why I want to talk about that is because very often when I speak to people, adults, who haven't memorized the Quran, they always seem put off by the fact that they're slightly older. They think that memorization is something only for young children, and as we'll be discovering, the most recent research on this suggests otherwise. Um, then we'll be talking about actually doing hifz, the practicality of it, so preparing, memorizing itself, and then reviewing. What we'll find is that reviewing is actually the most important part here. And if we get time, which I honestly doubt we will, we will try to resume Surah Mulk. And of course, we will make some time for hearing all of your recitation, inshallah. Does anybody have any questions on this?
No, not as yet.
Great. Well, let's begin then. So, last week, or not last week, last lesson, we spoke about adorning our lives with the Quran, essentially thinking that we have these pockets of remembrance scattered throughout our day in which we can continually invoke the meanings and the messages of the Quran. And you can see that picture in the background there: action, situation, thoughts, physical feelings, emotions. That's we spoke a little bit about cognitive behavior therapy and how repeatedly recalling certain ideas, certain thoughts can change your emotions and therefore your actions. So we use that as an analogy to think about these pockets of remembrance. If we're continually thinking about how Allah is great and beautiful, and we're continually cognizant of the blessings that He's enacted throughout our lives, it will turn us into grateful worshippers of Him. So let's say we're reconfiguring, we're rewiring our brains by continually remembering Allah. And we came across several pockets of remembrance. Salah, of course, is one of the most important. Congregational prayer as well.